So say you start a company and one of the biggest VCs in the world invest in you. They don't just give you money, one of their partners also joins your board. Now imagine you discover that another partner from that same VC firm sits on the board of one of your competitors. I'd imagine that would ruffle some feathers. That's basically the point of an investigation by the Department of Justice into a16z. Now, what is going on is that the DOJ has been investigating a16z for nearly a year over the board positions two of its partners are holding at competing data companies. On one side, you have Databricks, where Ben Horowitz, who is the co-founder of a16z, he sits on the board of Databricks. And on the other hand, you have Fivetran, where an a16z general partner named Martin Casado sits on the board. Now, on the surface, you may wonder what the problem is. I mean, VCs invest in a lot of companies and their partners get to sit on board. That's literally how venture capital works, right? Well, in truth, when these investments were first made, Databricks and Fivetran were operating in fairly different parts of the data infrastructure market. Databricks was associated with data processing and analytics, while Fivetran was mainly focused on data ingestion, basically helping companies move data from different sources into the systems where they could actually use it. So you could reasonably look at both companies operating at different corners of the same wider markets, except that markets don't always stay the same. It's a flux. Databricks has since moved into data ingestion and orchestration with products like Lakeflow, and suddenly the two companies no longer sit quite in separate boxes anymore. They're now kind of moving toward each other more and more, and this is where something called interlocking directorate comes into the picture. Under Section 8 of the Clayton Act, there are circumstances where overlapping directors between competing companies can create an antitrust problem. And this is not exactly a brand new concern. Actually, the DOJ has in the past challenged similar arrangements involving companies that became competitors. In other words, the law recognizes that having overlapping leadership or board representation can create problems when companies are competing in the same market. However, just to emphasize, DOJ is investigating a16z. This does not automatically mean that a16z has been found to have violated antitrust law. The investigation could ultimately end without enforcement. And if DOJ does find a violation, the most straightforward solution would probably be for one of the relevant board positions to go. But whether one person eventually has to give up a board seat or not is not even what intrigues me the most here. What actually intrigues me here is basically how powerful modern VCs have become. I mean, venture capital is not simply take this money, good luck. The big firms do provide capital, strategic advice, recruiting, introductions, industry connections, and very importantly, board level influence. So the value of a VC relationship is not just the money, it's the network and the access that comes with it, as you may know already. However, this whole discourse is quite paradoxical in that Databricks and Fivetran are not exactly competitors. They're also partners, right? Databricks has recognized Fivetran as a partner. Fivetran has also recognized Databricks as a strategic alliance partner. So you have two companies that can be partners in one context and competitors in another context. I should make a video illustrating this very soon. Please hold me to it. And now, sitting above these two partners slash competitors, we have the same VC firm. And this is actually becoming quite normal in tech, in that your competitor can be your customer, your competitor can also be your partner, and your investor can invest in your competitor. The same investor can potentially have board level relationships with both companies. It feels quite incestuous if you ask me. I mean, as a founder, have you ever experienced this before, where your VC or your investor actually invests in your competitor? How did you take that, or what do you think about that? So now, is this a problem? I mean, I would not automatically deem this to be a problem. VC firms investing across industry is not exactly suspicious, and having investors who are quite deeply involved with their portfolio companies can actually be quite valuable, as you may know. The problem is that the tech industry is becoming super interconnected. Companies that once occupied very different parts of the market are now expanding or eating into each other's territories. And when that happens, relationships that were perfectly normal some 5 years ago can suddenly start to look very different and suspicious maybe. So I think the premise here is about concentration of influence, right? If a VC firm is investing across an entire tech ecosystem, sitting on boards, advising companies, and building relationships across that ecosystem, how much influence is actually too much? At what point does being deeply connected to an industry start creating conflicts that the market itself did not exactly anticipate. Because really, the interesting thing about this case is that nobody had to necessarily do anything differently for the problem to emerge. It was just a thing of the market changing and Databricks expanding innocently, which now made both Databricks and Fivetran move closer together, and suddenly the structure or the relationship is now being questioned. So just sort of prepping you, this is probably something we're going to see more of as tech companies continue to expand into each other's territory. The lines between competitors and partners and investors and platforms are becoming more and more blurry, and as the companies become more interconnected, so do the people and the institutions sitting behind them. So it's not to say or ask if a16z broke the law. It is basically a thing of how much influence should one investor be able to have across an entire industry. I think that's a much sustainable question to ask. It should be more than just one board seat, and it goes beyond all parties involved in this particular story. But as usual, I'm really happy to hear your thoughts in the comments, and especially if you have been maybe a founder or a company or something, and your investor gets to invest in your competitor and also sort of sit on the board of what would like be your competitor, how would you sort of react to that? What would you reckon to be the way forward with this? As usual, I will see you in the next one.